Am I many weeks late for this video? Yes. Do I care? A little bit, and I'm really sorry about that. But if I'm being honest with myself, do I really care? Yeah, still, I'm actually genuinely sorry it took me this long to get to this. Hey, what's up? My name is John Bonjour. I'm an artist and a normally film enthusiast. Today I have drawn some art and I would like to enthuse about a game for, I guess, the second time because I covered Hellboy. Today we're talking about Spider-Man 2. Well, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man 2. The sequel to the Insomniac Spider-Man game. The sequel to the Insomniac Spider-Man and the Insomniac Miles Morales. So this is a 20-something hour game. I'm absolutely not going to be able to cover everything in there. Before we get into spoilers, I'm going to give you some overall thoughts. Most importantly, this is like one of the best games I've ever played. That's really what it comes down to. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, one of my 3 favorite comic book characters, so I'm a little bit very biased in saying that this is maybe the greatest Spider-Man game we've ever gotten. I will say there is, generally speaking, some debate in terms of if this story is better than the first or the Morales game. There's a debate to be had, but let's be honest, both of those games had incredible stories, and this one also has an incredible story. Even if it was third in that ranking, it's still one of the best superhero games ever made. From here on out, I'm going to be talking a little bit more in depth just about spoilers and kind of stuff, I don't know, just all the little details. We'll get into a lot of stuff, but just know, from here on out, I'm not worrying too much about spoilers. First and foremost, this is a game, so I think what's most important is the gameplay. Insomniac Spider-Man games have always had great gameplay. Their swinging is really solid, and their fighting, their combat feels punchy and strong without being like, you have to just beat the crap out of a guy for 15 minutes. And I think just overall, the way they incorporate the basic swinging, the basic fighting, and then other kind of challenges throughout, it's all really solid. And everything that worked about all of that is only improved on here. First and foremost, the swinging is somehow so much better than it was, and I didn't think needed that much improvement. The only complaint that I had from the last 2 games was that maybe it was a little slow. That's really all I had. Well, this one, they took that to heart. You can jam. It's also a bigger city, which is pretty cool, just in terms of gameplay. It gives you more areas to explore, more different terrains. That's very fun. But like I was saying, the swinging is so incredibly solid. Like I'm so impressed with what they've done with the swinging mechanics, especially because they've given you the option to turn off swing assist and to turn on fall damage, which means I did both of those immediately. So if you're bad at swinging, you are bad at swinging. The game does not really correct you to make you better at swinging. Guys, I thought I was good at this. I really did. And then I turned all that off, and the learning curve to get back to being able to swing through the city was so much higher than I thought it was going to be. And to be clear, so worth it, because now when I'm swinging through the city, I feel like I get to make choices, and like I get to really genuinely, like, there's stakes. If I fall, it's like a game, so it's not the end of the world, but like if I fall, there is damage. Like I could die, and that's cool. I guess that's true in real life now that I'm thinking about it. But I'm probably not going to test that one. Other gameplay though, the bosses are really solid. I think there's a parry mechanic that they've introduced in this that is half good, I think. I like the concept of it, but without there's like a parry assist kind of thing where you turn it on. I know it's kind of ironic, right? I need the assist for parry, but you turn it on and it gives you just like another half a second to hit the parry button. I was finding that maybe I'm just bad at this, but I could not get the timing right without that assist on. Once you put it on, it's a fine mechanic, and I think it works really well. And the bosses are all way more cinematic. Just from the opening scene, we're talking giant Sandman across the whole city. You have to swing up to get him. Like, this is one of the most grand games I have ever seen. The way that they incorporate the city into the whole deal, I loved the Sandman opener. I think it was the best way to make me kind of calm my fears that maybe they weren't going to be able to outdo themselves. And then they jump in the game and they're like, no, we're going to, from the start. Incredible. But that does get me into story. So there's so much to say about this story. At its core, this is a really solid Spider-Man story. But I also think at its core, it's a little bit messy. They're dealing with 2 Spider-Men, which is a lot to handle, and 2 separate stories with 2 different sets of auxiliary characters. There's a lot going on. And then you introduce the black suit kind of storyline and Kraven the Hunter and then Venom. There's so much in this game. It's way more than they've ever tried to tackle, and I think overall they did an incredible job with it. My biggest complaint for the game as a whole, if we're being honest, is that there's, once the kind of symbiotes at the end, so it's cutting through all the story, and there's, again, like I said, so much to talk about. Cutting through all the story, eventually Venom gets his hand on the whatever space rock, and then it like sends symbiotes. They start overtaking the city. That whole eldritch horror taking over the city element was really cool, and it was used for like maybe 10 minutes of the game. There is no side thing to do when the city is overtaken by that. It's just the city has been overtaken by symbiotes. Get to the thing, start the final mission. Which, to be fair, like, that's how it would actually go. That's what would be the priority. But like, you're playing a game and you want to kind of spend time. I actually saw the final mission and I spent a little extra time just swinging around this overtaken city because it was really beautiful. Like, it was really well created and really interesting. And I feel like when they did the same kind of thing with Devil's Breath and with the just snowstorm in the last one, they did a good job making you feel like you spent plenty of time in those cities, in that world, to the point where you genuinely felt like you had to stop it. Like, it was important that you took care of this because the city is going downhill. Where this was just like, this is a cool skin for the city. And then it's just on to the final battle. Not a huge issue, but I think that just plays into a bigger thing where I feel that the third act of this game could have used a little bit more time, a little bit more story. Similarly, I think kind of leading into the third act where Spider-Man is dealing with the black suit, they did a lot with it. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate what they did, and I think Yuri Lowenthal's performance is incredible in the way that he like adds on to the anger as he goes. I think I would have appreciated a little bit more time with him leading into that. A little bit more time. Pretty much everything in this game could have used just a little bit more time. Draw it out just slightly more, except the first act, actually. That was well paced. But everything second and third act really could have used just a couple more side missions, a couple more things to kind of flesh out Kraven, flesh out Spider-Man's black suit arc, flesh out Venom as he becomes Venom and is fighting with Harry. All of that could have used just another couple of scenes, another couple of sections of the game, just to make it feel a little more natural story-wise. But at the end of the day, this is a really impressive game with great mechanics, a very well-told story, even if I feel like it kind of has a few issues here and there. And most importantly, it has a solid emotional character arc for Peter, Miles, and MJ. Very incredibly hard to do. I appreciate that. Speaking of MJ, remember in the last game where all the missions we had to play as her were kind of horrible and we hated doing it? Not true anymore. Honestly, her missions in this, so much better. I genuinely appreciated getting to play as her character because that was never the problem for me. I'm not one of those people that feels like, oh, you're not playing as Spider-Man for 5 minutes of the game. What a horrible choice. Like, I think it's interesting. I like the idea of grounding us for a minute and giving us kind of a view of other people's experience in the Spider-Man universe. My problem was just that they were really, really hard and horribly planned out to the point where if you got seen, you die and you have to start all the way over. And in the scene that I thought was better in the first one, the Grand Central one, there were so many weird bugs where you were supposed to be able to watch Spider-Man like pick up all these guys, but he would just sort of disappear into the ceiling, and it was just very awkward and not immersive at all. This is the opposite. The scenes that we get to play as MJ, really what they did, and I think this is brilliant, they focus on MJ and Peter's relationship as Peter is getting the black suit. So as he's developing in the black suit, as the black suit is starting to kind of take over him and he's starting to see the evil, he becomes this creature, this monster. And then you have to follow him as MJ first through their neighborhood and then through like this subway tunnel. It's a couple of they're two very actually frightening sequences. They make them into a horror game, like a horror survival game for a minute. Greatest choice they could have ever made because A, it's interesting for the characters, and B, you just get to, it's just like a cool thing that you would never get to see if you were playing as Peter. That's kind of my overall thought. Generally, it's a little bit rushed, but overall, incredibly solid game. I do want to highlight a couple of moments that I think are the best thing. They're the best thing that's ever happened. First of all, the Peter and Miles fight was so solid. I knew going into this that was a chance that we would get to kind of fight Peter as Miles, because you see him developing, getting worse. I think we all kind of thought that might happen. I was a little bit hesitant on thinking, okay, does that take away from Peter's arc in choosing to take off the suit? Does that ruin what he has to kind of go through for that? Not even slightly. The people at Insomniac know exactly what they're doing to make a Spider-Man story that is both fulfilling to general Spider-Man lore and also to these individual people, these people behind the masks. So that fight is incredible. I love the way that even our gadgets and our, power effects and all that, not all of that can be strong enough to fight him. Like at some points you just have to get creative and hit a bell or get creative and dodge. Like I appreciate the way that they did that. In the same way, the black suit Spider-Man versus Lizard is very long, by the way, which I wasn't expecting, and also very fun, really exciting, and kind of hard, which again, I could just be bad at games. The biggest surprise of this game, as far as I'm concerned, was Venom being playable for like a solid 10-minute portion of the game. I thought there was a chance that he might be playable as like an after kind of thing, like a skin, essentially. Which would have been a little dumb. Honestly, I'm glad that they didn't go for that. So when we're watching Harry become Venom, I was not expecting the camera to pan around and then just let us tear through shit for 10 minutes. That is one of the most satisfying parts of the game, because you want to feel like Venom has power. You want to feel like he can just take out anybody. It's simultaneously raising the stakes for Venom as a villain and giving us something that we've always wanted to do, which is just wreak havoc as Venom. A thing that you really couldn't do when you're Spider-Man because he has to be redeemable on some level. Venom does not. And I think that the scene is so exciting, so much fun. You get to just tear people to shreds. And there's so many, it feels like an endless wave of people, but it never gets boring because there's so many interesting, creative ways that you can, kill them. It's just such an exciting, engaging sequence. And then we get out of that kind of scene and I was like, wow, that is one of the best scenes in a video game. I'm so impressed that they did that. And then I was like, okay, back to Spider-Man. Nope. Venom versus Kraven. Not prepared for that. That was so exciting, so interesting. I loved that we got to fight Kraven as Venom. Again, another way to raise the stakes for Venom, but also it gave us the Kraven fight that we were kind of looking for, and it provided such an interesting turn in the story that I wasn't expecting. I will say, that is one thing that I'm just a little bummed about. Kraven was so well handled in the parts that he was in. I think this is probably my favorite version of Kraven the Hunter in media outside of comics. But they did so very little with him. They used him so sparingly to the point that I don't think, and again, it's been a couple of weeks, so maybe we did, but I don't remember a Kraven fight with Spider-Man. And that's a shame. Like, there should have been some kind of boss battle with Kraven when you're fighting as Spider-Man. So I'm a little bit kind of mixed on that. I appreciate and love what they did with the Venom versus Kraven, but I'm also a little bit like, I'm thrown off a little that Spider-Man never really fought Kraven. Would have been probably important. I guess you fight enough of Kraven's goons that you can sort of feel like you have, but it's just not quite the same. But I can forgive that, because by the time you get to the final Venom fight, where you spend some time as MJ shooting a bunch of symbiotes, then you go to Miles and Peter, and they have to fight Venom in their own way. Peter gets to fight Venom at the high school. That whole final stretch of the game, while I have some story issues, I think is one of the best boss battles in any video game. I think they killed it. It was so impressive. I love that they went for the kind of King Venom thing with the wings. It's just such a great evolution of that character, and it showed me that Insomniac sees this as their symbiote game. Like, they pulled out all the stops. Maybe they'll do something with Carnage in the future, but this is the Venom game. And I hope, in the same way that like the last one was the Finn game, the Tinkerer game, and the first one was the Doc Ock game, but also the Mr. Negative game. I hope that they pull here and there from what they need from that, but then let this be the definitive symbiote arc of this Spider-Man. I don't need 16 other symbiotes coming in and fighting him. We've seen that. We fought the gooey guys. We're good. But it certainly feels to me like Insomniac saw this as their one opportunity to do the symbiotes, and so they just did the symbiotes. I greatly appreciate that. I also enjoy that we got to fight MJ for a second. Well, actually more than a second, as I think she was Scream, maybe Shriek. I don't remember. They all have weird names. The point is, I appreciated that scene because, again, they tied in emotional stakes and kind of villain fighting boss battle stakes. One more thing, I did not hate the Miles suit. I know everyone hates the Miles suit. I understand. I don't love it. I don't think it's spectacular, but I don't hate it. Or I didn't. Until I saw some concept art of a different version of that Miles. I think they called it the Evolved suit. The concept art is so much better. It makes me so angry because this suit is fine. It's all right. It's a weird place in the story to put it. It's just kind of awkward that they just drop it in there, but it's fine. As a suit itself, it's okay. But the versions of it that we could have gotten just make me so sad. Like I don't know what happened here, but they made some choices. At the end of the day, that's just a tiny nitpick, but it's just such a weird call that I couldn't not mention it. Plus, it's a Spider-Man review and everyone is talking about that suit. So I really could not mention it. But overall, this game is so impressive to me. I'm so happy with it. I'm sure there's so much that I didn't talk about. But as a Spider-Man fan, I'm very content. I think that this is another great entry. We now have a trilogy of incredible Spider-Man games. And I hope that they make so many more of them. Make as many as you want, Insomniac. I'm going to keep buying it. Speaking of, by the way, the post-credits scene where they introduce Silk. I knew of Silk sort of in passing. When they brought up that character at the end of the game, I was like, okay, that's interesting. And so I started reading some Silk comic books. Can't wait. She's great. She's a wonderful character. And I think that there's some really interesting kind of unique new stuff that they could do in this universe so that it wouldn't feel like just another spider person. Like she's got creative things that they can do in terms of mechanics and in terms of story. I'm really excited to see what they come up with. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Spider-Man. I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you're a Spider-Man fan, you've probably already played it. But if you haven't, play the game. And if you haven't played any of them, definitely play these games. They are so impressive and just exactly what a Spider-Man fan wants. Thank you so much for watching this video and checking out my channel. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on Spider-Man, comics, movies, TV shows, any games, or sweaters, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment down below what you want me to review next. Or do none of those things because I am not your dad.